Hello viewers and students. This is Dr. Kashinath Neharkar, Assistant Professor Sri Shivaji Law College Parbhani, and I welcome you in my YouTube channel Law Education Volunteer Dr. Kashinath Neharkar. Friends, today we are going to discuss concept of rule against accumulation, that is direction for accumulation of income under section 17 of Act. Friends, we know the transfer of property is nothing but transaction between two living person for transfer of property. After completion of such transaction, the property gets transferred from transferor to transferee, and then transferee becomes absolute owner of property. Then the transferee can enjoy property exclusively and without any kind of unlawful interference from any person. He can enjoy the profit and benefit of that property also. The transferor cannot impose any restriction on enjoyment of property, or he cannot direct transferee to accumulate the income. This is general rule. But there are certain circumstances where transferor can give directions to transferee for the accumulation of income. So what shall be its validity? This is dealt by section 17 of Act. Section 17 of the Act deals with prohibition of direction of accumulation by transferor with certain exceptions. Firstly, friends, we must understand what is accumulation of income. The term accumulation means to collect and store income without enjoying it. It means to collect and store the income of property which is transferred. The transferor directs transferee. He gives some direction to transferee through the transaction to separate the income from ownership of property. It means though the property is transferred to transferee, though the ownership is transferred to transferee, but the transferee has to keep the income out of that property separate and has to create the fund, and it has to be given to that person to whom the transferor directs. Now we must see what is the rule against accumulation under section 17, that is also called as a direction for accumulation of income. According to section 17, where the terms of transfer of property directs that income arising from property shall be accumulated either wholly or in part during period longer than the life of transferor or the period of 18 years from the date of transfer, such direction shall be void to the extent to which the period during which accumulation directed exceeds the longer of above period. And there are certain exceptions also. Afterwards we are going to discuss the exception. So firstly, we must see that section 17 allows accumulation of income up to certain period, and beyond that period that accumulation is invalid. So whatever the terms and conditions of that transaction, whatever the directions that are given by transferor to transferee for accumulation of income, to store the income of the property which is transferred to him, section 17 provides that that direction will be valid only up to the period which is provided by section 17, longer period which is provided by 17, and direction beyond that will be invalid. So firstly, it prohibits accumulation of income, it allows direction for accumulation of income up to certain limit only, and it invalidates direction for accumulation of income beyond that limit. Now we must see what is the object for which section 17 is inserted. Actually, in original enactment there was no provision relating to direction, though in original enactment this was under section 18, but after amendment this is inserted in section 17. So first object of this section is to prohibit direction for accumulation of income for indefinite period. This is section 17 is somewhat supplementary to section 14. Under section 14, tidying of property with particular generation for indefinite period, this is prohibited. And in section 17, tidying of property in other way, though the property cannot be tied up, the transaction may not provide for the tidying of property with generation, but that transaction may provide that income may be tied up with particular person by giving direction for accumulation of income, and this is prohibited by section 17. So property may be given to transferor, but he may be directed not to use, not to enjoy the property, benefits of that property. Such directions may be given, and such directions are regulated by section 17, and it invalidates such direction beyond particular limit. Up to particular limit it is okay. So this section is provided to ensure free and unrestricted enjoyment of property by the transferee. So this section provides separate rule to restrict period of accumulation. So it further provides certain exceptions also. So now we are going to see what is the permissible accumulation that is allowed by section 17. According to section 17, the maximum permissible accumulation of income which is allowed for any of following period, which is longer. Firstly, that period is the life of transferor, or the period of 18 years from the date of transfer, whichever is longer. So when the transferor makes the document according to which the property is transferred to transferee, and if that document consists the direction, if that document contains the direction to transferee that the income of that property shall be accumulated and it shall be given to somebody, such directions will be valid only up to the longer period which is provided by section 17 and not beyond that. So that longer period is the life of transferor or 18 years from the date of transaction, whichever the longer period. So if, for example, if that transaction is entered on 1st January of 2019 and that person is living on that date, so that accumulation period starts from that particular day and that will run up to the life of transferor. But in case if that transferor die within 3 or 4 years, in such circumstances that accumulation period will be 18 years from the date of transaction. So whichever the longer period, that period will be the permissible period for accumulation, and at expiry of longer period, then that property along with all incidental benefits shall go to the transferee. The transferee will be absolutely entitled to enjoy property along with the benefits. So the result of such section is that at the end of last mentioned period or the longest period, which is called as a maximum period of accumulation under section 17, the property together with all benefits shall go to transferee. So the accumulation of income for above period shall be valid, but accumulation beyond such a period is void and that will not be operated. For example, we have to see the illustration. A transfers property to B for his life, and with direction that the accumulation of said property shall be accumulated. The income of said property shall be accumulated during A's life, and they shall be given to C. The accumulation of income is valid only up to the life of A. So this is illustration. So as soon as A die, the B is entitled to enjoy the income. Then he is not required to pay it to C. There are certain exceptions to this rule. First exception is payment of debts of transferor. So at the time of transfer, if the transferor have some debts, if the transferor have some liabilities to pay, and for that purpose transferor can give directions to transferee for the accumulation of income and for the payment of debts that he has borrowed. Second exception is raising portion for children's of transferor or any other person who is getting interest under that document or transaction. For that also the accumulation of income can be made. Any share of the income can be given to the children of transferor or any person to whom he directs. This amount can be given to him as a maintenance, and in such circumstances section 17 is not applicable even for the payment of debts, because the accumulation is required to be made up to for the period which is necessary for repayment of debts. Similarly, until that moment when that children require the amount for their maintenance, the amount will be paid, and the period which is provided by section 17 is not applicable there also. And third exception is the preservation of maintenance of property which is transferred to him. For that purpose also the accumulation of income shall be allowed beyond this period, which is maximum period which is provided by 17. So these are three exceptions. For example, if that property which is given to transferee is house property, so whatever the income that transferee receives from that property, so some share of that income shall be utilized for the maintenance, repair, etc. So for that purpose transferee may be directed to accumulate a particular share of income, and that should be utilized for the maintenance. So let me see the pictorial example. See, this is A and he is owner of house property. Then he makes a document. By that document he transfers that property to B. Then simultaneously by that document he further directs transferee to accumulate the income that may arise out of house property through rent, etc., and that shall be given to C. Such transaction is made, such a direction is given by A. Then what shall be the legality of such direction? That will be dealt by section 17, and with application of rule against accumulation, the directions which are given by A to B for accumulation of income and shall be given to C, such directions are valid only up to the longest period which is provided by section 17, and that longest period is the life of transferor or the 18 years from the date of transaction, whichever is longer period, so that are valid only up to this period and not beyond that. So with application of section 17, as soon as that longest period expires, the B transferee, who is B, he becomes absolute owner of income at the expiry of maximum period, and then he is not required to pay it to C. So this is what the rule of accumulation. The basic object of section 17 is to prevent the accumulation of income for indefinite period, and it will help transferee to enjoy the property along with its income after expiry of that period. So friends, thank you. If you have any doubt, you can mention it in comments. Thank you.